It's 7 p.m. Wednesday, September 11th here in Seoul, and these are the top stories at this hour. Tens of millions of people in South Korea are traveling to their hometowns or overseas for the major national holiday of Chuseok. We have the latest on traffic conditions. South Korea is filing a complaint at the World Trade Organization over Japan's trade restrictions. Seoul says the measures are politically motivated and violate WTO rules. U.S. President Donald Trump announces the resignation of his national security advisor John Bolton following long-simmering differences between the two. Eyes are now on where the stalled denuclearization talks with North Korea are heading following Bolton's departure. And South Korea adds more than 450,000 jobs last month compared to a year ago, bringing the unemployment rate down to the lowest level for August in almost 6 years. NEWSCENTER begins now. Good evening and welcome to Arirang News Center, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Noara. Now, there's only a day to go until the Chuseok holiday starts in Korea. Millions of people living in Seoul will be or are already traveling to see their loved ones in their hometowns. This, of course, means a lot of traffic. And we have Lee Min-sun, who is at the Seoul toll gate with more on the pre-holiday traffic. Min-sun, how are the roads looking?
Hi, Aram. I'm at the Seoul toll gate, a gateway to major highways that many people will be using to travel to other parts of the country. Like you said, the Chuseok holiday starts tomorrow for 4 days, from Thursday through the weekend for most people. Because it's relatively short, many people have already started their journey a day early. The congestion hasn't been much bad on the highways this afternoon, but at this point, cars are barely moving in some areas. It's likely to stay that way till late Thursday. At this rate, it will take about 6 hours to get to Busan and 7 hours to Mokpo. A total of 33.5 million people are expected to travel during the holidays, and over 86% of them will go by car. The highways will be most crowded on Friday, the actual day of Chuseok, with some 8.9 million people mostly coming back to Seoul. But today, some 3.5 million cars have already hit the road. On average, there will be some 5 million cars on highways each day, which is 7.5% more than last year. And for that, it's expected to take a lot longer for people to reach their destinations. According to the Transportation Ministry, drive times to major cities could be up to 1 hour and 50 minutes longer than last year. From Seoul to Busan by car, it's estimated to take 8.5 hours. The same distance usually takes less than 5 hours outside of the holiday period. To Daejeon and Gangneung, it will take 4 hours and 40 minutes, which is almost twice the usual travel time. The traffic authorities will also provide real-time traffic information based on IT technologies. That information will be available on the traffic authorities' website and on mobile applications. Drivers can also check broadcasts or the signs on highways for alternative routes with less traffic. That's all I have at this hour. For those driving, have a great holiday and be safe.
Yes, certainly safety is key, especially at this time of year. Min-sun, thank you very much. Meanwhile, President Moon Jae-in has sent his well wishes to all Koreans for this holiday. In a video message to the nation, he said he hopes for a fairer society for everyone.
활력 있는 경제가 서로를 넉넉하게 하고 공정한 사회가 서로에게 믿음을 주며 평화로운 한반도가 서로의 손을 잡게 할 것입니다.
Moon also said the nation is moving in a direction that will lead to mutual prosperity for all. He expressed sympathy to those affected by the recent Typhoon Ling-Ling, while thanking the first responders who work even during the holiday to keep the nation safe. In other news, South Korea has filed a complaint at the World Trade Organization over Japan's export controls, which Seoul has called retaliation over political disputes. Tokyo has dismissed that allegation, claiming the measures are in line with the WTO rules. Our Kim Jae has the details.
Korea's Trade Minister Yoo Myung-hee told reporters on Wednesday that Seoul has decided to file a complaint to the WTO over Japan's trade curbs on 3 key materials which are essential to producing semiconductors and display panels. The complaint will be officially initiated as Seoul handed in its request letter for consultations with the Embassy of Japan in Geneva and the WTO to seek the end of the export restrictions. Japan's move is widely seen as a retaliation against Korea's Supreme Court rulings ordering Japanese firms to compensate Korean victims who were forced into working for them during Japan's 1910 to 1945 brutal colonial rule of the Korean peninsula. As such, Yoo added Japan's curbs are discriminatory and motivated by political reasons.
Japan announced its export curbs without any prior notice and executed the curbs just 3 days after the announcement. It has not only ignored procedural justification, but also lacks consideration for its neighboring country.
Seoul accused Tokyo of committing 3 major violations of WTO rules. First, the WTO's obligation to not discriminate. Second, changing export procedures for 3 materials that used to be traded freely with a general permit, so that now they require individual permits. And lastly, Seoul claims that Tokyo's export curbs have taken advantage of trade in retaliation over political issues. While Yoo said South Korea wishes to resolve the issue through bilateral talks, if consultations with the Japanese embassy in Geneva and the WTO do not resolve the issue within the next 2 months, Seoul will take the case to the WTO panel ruling. However, that could take more than 2 years to be resolved legally. Meanwhile, after South Korea's press briefing, a Japanese government official told reporters that Japan's measures do not violate any WTO rule. According to Japanese Kyodo News Agency on Wednesday, the official said the move was merely a change in export regulations for safety purposes and not an entire ban on exports. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea's latest complaint to the WTO against Japan's export curbs won't be the first time the nations clash in Geneva. Our Kim Bo-kyung looks at the dispute settlement process as well as previous cases between the two sides.
Before countries involved in a trade dispute go through the settlement process, WTO encourages the parties to consult with each other. As such, Korea will officially ask Japan for a bilateral consultation. Japan is allowed to reject the request, but this usually does not happen because the complaining party can request the establishment of a panel right away. The members of the panel are decided within a month, and most of the times it is comprised of 3 trade experts. The panel examines the dispute, and its deliberation can last 6 months on average. The examination period varies depending on the dispute. After the examination is over, the parties need to submit the panel report to the Dispute Settlement Body, or DSB. If the DSB approves and adopts the report, the DSB will extend a set of suggestions to the party receiving the complaint, followed by a report of how it plans to implement the DSB suggestion. This whole process usually takes about 15 months, but it becomes longer if any party appeals, dragging the dispute for more than 3 years or longer as the appellate body reviews the case. There were 6 previous WTO disputes between Korea and Japan until now, with most of them ruled in favor of Seoul. Out of those 6, 4 of them were concluded and 2 are still in progress. Seoul filed a complaint with the WTO in 2004, calling on Japan to remove its quota on imports of Korean seaweed, only to withdraw 2 years later as Japan decided to raise the quota. In 2006, Japan imposed tariffs of 27% on DRAM made by SK Hynix. Yet, WTO ruled in favor of Korea and Japan had to lift the tariffs. In 2015, Japan again filed a complaint, claiming Korea's ban on imports from its Fukushima region is against international trade agreements. However, WTO again took Korea's side this year May. Among the concluded cases, the most recent one was in 2016. Korea imposed anti-dumping duties on air pressure control valves, and Japan filed a complaint saying it is violation of WTO regulations. According to a report disclosed by the WTO appellate body on Monday this week, Korea have won the major issues. The 7th WTO dispute might take a long time to settle, as Japan is still refusing to back down in its export restrictions on South Korea. supporting its decision on unfounded statements related to its national security. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Shifting gears now, and with President Trump's national security advisor John Bolton having left his post, questions are being raised as to how, or if at all, nuclear talks with North Korea will proceed. Our Lee Ji-won has more.
In a tweet Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump announced that he had asked U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton for his resignation, informing him that his services are no longer needed at the White House. The U.S. president added that he disagreed strongly with many of Bolton's suggestions, as did others he said in the administration. Trump will be naming a new national security advisor next week. The announcement comes after months of rumors that the two clashed on policy, including on how to denuclearize North Korea. Some of their disagreements were public, with Trump playing down North Korea's short-range ballistic missile tests, while Bolton called them out as violations of UN Security Council resolutions. Bolton was appointed as Trump's third national security advisor in April last year and was widely known to have advised Trump to walk out of the second summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Hanoi back in February after Pyongyang offered to dismantle only its main nuclear facility in Yongbyon. North Korea, too, has numerous times expressed anger and dissatisfaction with Bolton through various statements. While Bolton's dismissal will not directly change Pyongyang's attitude, a North Korea expert says it increases the possibility of U.S. changing its calculations and going back into talks.
North Korea hasn't been a really trustworthy partner ever since Hanoi. The North could still test-fire intercontinental ballistic missiles or satellites, something that will go against President Trump's self-congratulatory comments that the recent launches were only short-ranged missiles. So Trump might be feeling a need to prove that his North Korea policy is successful. And so with Bolton, the hardliner on Pyongyang, gone, there's a chance Trump might ease up in his negotiations with the North.
The gist of the current tug-of-war between the two sides, the expert said, is whether the U.S. will agree to sanctions relief as part of the North's step-by-step denuclearization. And with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo not likely to go hard against Trump, the expert said it remains to be seen what decision the U.S. will make. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
North Korean state media are touting the short-range missiles fired on Tuesday, but they have stopped short this time of calling them a success. Kim Ji-yeon tells us why.
North Korea's state media reported Wednesday that the regime's test launch the day before was of a super-large multiple rocket launcher and that it was supervised by its leader, Kim Jong-un. Unlike the last time it test-fired such projectiles and made an announcement, state media did not call the launches a success, raising the possibility that some of the projectiles may have failed to strike their targets. A South Korean military source confirmed that one of the projectiles hit an uninhabited island in the East Sea, referred to in Korean as a rock target. But the other one struck not far away on the North Korean mainland, and this might be one reason it didn't call the launches a success. But the source also said it's premature to call them a complete failure because both of the projectiles flew more than 200 kilometers right over North Korea's own territory, intended to show the regime's confidence in its weapons development. The North Korean leader reportedly said the launches helped verify the technical parameters of their new launch system, and now they only need to test its multiple launch capability, signaling that it may fire more projectiles in the future. The same source denied claims the regime may have fired 3 and not 2 projectiles on Tuesday, following the North's release of photos from the launch site that shows a transporter erector launcher and 4 launch tubes. 3 of them were shown to have been uncovered after the launch, while the remaining 2 was blocked, raising speculations that one of the launches could have been a misfire, gone undetected by the South Korean military. Compared to previous pictures of its launches released by Pyongyang, pictures of Tuesday's launches hitting a target were not shown this time. As for criticism that South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff have not revealed more about Tuesday's launches, including the projectile's flight altitude, the Joint Chiefs responded that it's due to concerns about exposing the South Korean military's intel gathering. They also denied local media reports speculating that it's because of a communication failure between South Korean and U.S. intelligence, or due to Seoul's refusal to renew JSOMIA, a military intel sharing pact with Japan. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
North Korea has long been criticized for its human rights abuses and for its unwillingness to improve them, but the regime has now decided to accept parts of international critique by the UN Human Rights Council. It says it will work with Seoul to help to resolve the issue of families separated by the Korean War. Our Oh Soo-young files this report.
North Korea said Wednesday that it will accept the recommendations of the United Nations Human Rights Council to help the thousands of families separated by the inter-Korean border. It was responding to a periodic review the Council conducts on all member states every 5 years. Since the 1950 to 53 Korean War, over 133,000 people in South Korea have registered as having immediate family in the north. There have been 21 official reunions since 2005. Using a lottery system to enable a small fraction of them to meet. But with the meetings largely at the mercy of the political mood between the two Koreas, human rights observers have called for the two sides to hold reunions on a regular basis, especially as more than half the people are 80 years or older.
Well, our office has for a long time been advocating for assisting or having a human rights approach to the issue of family separation. And we've talked about different kinds of separated families, those who were separated by the war, but also victims of abductions by North Korea during and after the war. And they need to make sure that contact can be restored in a humane and a positive way. Also, things like restoring contacts in other ways, through telephone or communication via letter.
The North said it will accept 132 of the 199 total recommendations brought forward by the UN Council earlier this year, including better protection of the rights of the disabled. However, it did not accept recommendations on scrapping its political prison camps, its use of forced labour, or request that it give humanitarian workers unimpeded access to the North Korean population.
It's also evident that there are serious human rights violations that are continuing, both in terms of civil and political rights and also in terms of fulfilling basic economic rights and needs of the population. Our understanding is that North Korea said that these recommendations don't reflect the reality on the ground in North Korea, so that's one of the reasons that they're not being maybe accepted.
Still, observers hope the North makes steady progress in heeding international criticism of its human rights situation and actually implements the recommendations that it has accepted.
The UN Human Rights Council is expected to officially adopt the periodic review around September 20th during its regular session in Geneva. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the Standing Committee of the National Security Council says it will give an extra diplomatic boost to help the soon-to-happen working-level talks between North Korea and the US. Holding its weekly meeting earlier today, the committee once again underscored the nation's goal of building a peaceful Korean peninsula. On a separate note, the members agreed to drive up the administration's new southern policy by strengthening its relationships with ASEAN member nations, including those visited by President Moon earlier this month. Turning to some economic news now, and South Korea's employment figures for the month of August are out and they paint a brighter picture for job seekers. Kim Hye-sung reports.
Around 452,000 jobs were added on year in August, the biggest jump since March 2017. According to Statistics Korea, it's the first job increase of more than 300,000 since January 2018. The employment rate for those aged 15 and above recorded 61.4%, up 0.5 percentage points on year. The number of people unemployed also fell by more than 270,000 to less than 860,000 people, making it the biggest monthly drop in more than 8 years. That brought the unemployment rate down 1 percentage point to 3%, the lowest level for August in nearly 6 years. The youth unemployment rate also fell near 3 percentage points on year to 7.2%. Statistics Korea attributed the job growth partly to a base effect as only 3,000 jobs were added in August 2018. Jobs in health and social welfare services also grew by 174,000. But the manufacturing sector continued to see job creation fall for the 17th consecutive month, down 24,000 on year. Finance sector jobs also fell for the 8th consecutive month. Retail and wholesale jobs dropped more than 50,000. By age group, those in their 20s, 50s, and 60s saw job creation go up, but those in their 30s and 40s still saw job creation fall.
Near 400,000 jobs created in August were jobs for the elderly, boosted by government finances. But high-quality jobs like those in manufacturing continued to drop. The pace of the decrease, however, eased from the previous month, resulting in a total job growth in August of 450,000. If you look at the details, the quality of these jobs is still low.
Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi said the August jobs data is very encouraging and that the government will continue its policy efforts to help the job growth continue. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
The South Korean government last year imposed a 52-hour limit on the work week for bigger companies, and data shows Koreans now work 13.5 minutes less a day, or nearly 70 minutes less a week. That's time they're using for recreation. The Labour Ministry analysed phone and credit card records and found that there was an evident drop in working hours in parts of the country near the biggest companies. Average working hours fell the most in the Gwanghwamun area of downtown Seoul at nearly 40 minutes a day, followed by the financial district of Yeouido at 10 minutes. In contrast, Kasan Digital Complex, home to many small companies, saw work hours rise by a little over half a minute. The data also showed more spending on recreation compared to a year before. People spent 18% more on sports and classes for self-development. Spending at bars or restaurants, where workers are often pressured to gather after work hours, dropped 1%. Japanese Prime Minister announced some major changes to his cabinet today, with many of the newly appointed members known to have a hardline stance against Korea. There are concerns on what this could imply for the future of Seoul-Tokyo relations. Park Ki-jun reports.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe made major changes to his cabinet on Wednesday to enhance his government's stability and effectively tackle major challenges. He replaced 17 out of 19 cabinet members, the largest reshuffle since Abe retook office in 2012. Deputy Prime Minister Taro Aso and Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga are the only aides who will keep their current posts. This reshuffle involves some key ministers who will have a clear impact on the direction of Korea-Japan relations. Foreign Minister Taro Kono has been named Japan's new defense minister. Kono has taken a hardline stance on the South Korean Supreme Court's decision on forced labor and the two countries' military intelligence sharing pact. His shift to the defense ministry is a sign Abe will stick to his strong stance against Seoul. And replacing Kono as foreign minister will be Toshimitsu Motegi. He was promoted for his part in negotiating a trade deal with the U.S. and is well known for having been a tough negotiator in the process. Japan's export restrictions on Korea will now be overseen by Issue Sugawara. Also seen as a right-winger, Sugawara is expected to build on the administration's firm position in its trade conflict with Seoul. And the education minister will be Koichi Hagiuda. He's likely to continue to distort history in Japan's textbooks by including Japan's false claims to Dokdo Island and misrepresenting Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II. It's widely believed that the shakeup means relations between Seoul and Tokyo will get even worse.
Naming ministers who've been playing important roles in relations with the U.S. reflects the possibility that Japan might try and use those ties to reinforce a hardline stance against Korea. But the new foreign minister could play a different role. Motegi generally appears hawkish, but he also seems to want dialogue with Korea. In that sense, this reshuffle is somewhat complex.
Also notable is Abe's pick of a rising star in Japanese politics, Shinjiro Koizumi, as his environment minister. The son of former Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi, he's seen as a top contender to become the next leader. His inclusion is seen as a way to win public support. Park Ki-jun, Arirang News.
South Korea has sent an official complaint to the International Olympic Committee over Japan's potential use of its imperial flag at the upcoming Tokyo Olympics next year. In a letter, Seoul's Sports Ministry expressed deep disappointment and concerns over the possible use of the rising sun flag. The ministry urged the IOC to ban the use of the flag, explaining it has the same connotations as the Nazis' swastika. Last month, Tokyo's Olympic Organizing Committee said there is no reason to ban the flag during the event, saying there is nothing inherently political about it. For those in Seoul not sure how to spend the Chuseok holiday, the city is offering a wide range of cultural sites and experiences. Our Kan Young-woo looks at where to go and how to get there.
With Chuseok being one of Korea's main holidays, it's a great opportunity to learn about Seoul's cultural heritage. The Cultural Heritage Foundation is opening up the capital city's 4 royal palaces for free. These palaces are from the Joseon dynasty, which lasted for about 500 years, starting in the late 1300s. Gyeongbokgung Palace will hold a concert of traditional music and give visitors an opportunity to try some of the desserts that were enjoyed by the Joseon royal family. At Changdeokgung Palace, visitors can also watch a traditional Bongsan mask dance and see some tightrope walking. If you're more of a night owl, you might want to check out the full moon through the night walking program at both Changgyeonggung and Deoksugung palaces. The Jongmyo Shrine and the royal tombs of the Joseon dynasty, the memorials to the kings and queens of the past, are also open free of charge. Now, if you're visiting Seoul for the first time and you're not really sure how to get around the city, there's the Seoul City Tour Tiger Bus. There are 4 courses tourists can use to visit famous attractions like the royal palaces, Namsan Mountain, the Hangang River, and areas like Gangnam, Hongdae, and Itaewon. Reservations are available on the tour bus website in Korean, English, Chinese, and Japanese. Some of the courses are giving discounts for Chuseok, with a ticket costing about $13. Once you book your course, you can get on and off that bus as many times as you want in a day. But since the bus for each course stops at different places and at different intervals, it's a good idea to check that information when planning your trip. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
It's now time to take a look at some of Arirang's digital media content, and today we have another episode of Koreator, where foreigners share their love for Korea.
Hello everyone, we are the Dance Crew. We covered multiple groups such as Blackpink, Five, Red Velvet, BTS,
What are we doing? Fixing my lashes. Nice pose.
Do it well.
Blow harder. Is this what you do when you're maknae?
Yeah.
스르르 스르르 곁에 눈을 떠봐 내 손을 잡아봐 매일 꿈속에만 그렸던 나잖아 그렇게도 원한 너와 내 시간들 baby 이제는 나와 함께해 눈을 감아 내 손을 잡아봐 다 잊어버려 혼자였던 시간 까만 세상 속에 네 편이 돼줄게 baby 이제는 나와 함께해 baby you and I
Thank you for watching this video, and you can be the next Koreator! Yay!
The nation has been under rainy weather for several days now. Let's hope things brighten up for the Chuseok holiday. To find out if they will, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Now, the southern provinces and Jeju will continue to be wet throughout the evening, and into our first day of Chuseok holiday tomorrow, the nation may see some drops of rain here and there under a heavy cloud cover. Now, thankfully, on the day of Chuseok on Friday, skies will be clear, so we'll be able to observe the full moon clearly. But then parts of the country will get more rain into the weekend, but it will just be a light drizzle that it won't affect the roads too much. And looking at our temperature readings, it shows that we'll have a cooler day as we start our Chuseok. Now, Seoul and Daegu will kick off to 20 degrees Celsius, and Busan and Jeju seems a little warmer at 22 and 24 degrees respectively. Daytime highs will go down a few degrees compared to today as well. Seoul, Busan, and Jeju will all reach 26 degrees, and similar readings will apply for the nation. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will wrap it up for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you as always for watching. Hope you all have a wonderful Chuseok holiday, and please do be safe there out on the roads. Stay tuned for News in Depth coming up next.